Happy Wednesday, everybody. Are you so ready for Christmas? I'm not. So hopefully, after I show you how to do this finish, I can run to the grocery store and get some more stuff so that way I can start baking, because I will literally find myself baking for hours tomorrow. So anyway, but Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. And this is a beautiful time of the year for us to just be able to be indoors, be creative, be painting furniture. And it's great because what I'm going to be showing you today on the Toscana milk paint finishes is the fact that you can have the comfort level of knowing that you're working on this in your home and it has no VOCs. It's like working with paints and shopping in the produce aisle. It's all natural and it has no VOCs. So it's really easy to work with. Now, I'm going to be showing you how to be able to get a finish that looks like this. The great thing about it is, and what I try to do as a teacher, and I do this in my Old World finishing course, where we go really deep into creating finishes that look a lot like this, but that to get even a little bit more complicated, is that I want you to start looking and dissecting a piece. I want you to be able to look at it and try to decide what is the first step, what would kind of be the second step, what would be the third step, and how would it be finished out. If you can start to look at it in that way, your eye will start to be trained, and then you'll be able to replicate this look in a whole lot of different colors. And then when you'll also see antique pieces, you'll be going, I know how to do that because Amy taught me how. All right, so the first thing you're gonna do, look at this. As we are looking at this finish, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna stain it, because that's how that piece would have been a long time ago. We think about the pedigree of a piece, that it would have a stained finish first, or maybe if it was painted. But as a rule, pieces of furniture were handed down or sold, and they would travel and they would go to different regions throughout Europe. And depending on the climate, depending on the part of the whatever country it was in, would be a lot of the color palette that they would have. And so I am emulating more of a Scandinavian finish. When I'm looking at this, I'm thinking of this finish being something that would have been on a more provincial piece. It was something that was maybe more in the countryside. It was worn, and it's kind of got more of a boxy finish to it, maybe a cupboard, a pantry, something that they would have used, maybe even a demi-lune. You could even use this on a chair, depending on the complexity of it, if there's a lot of carving. But on this larger piece, I did it on a larger flat board, as if you could imagine it being on maybe a large cupboard. So what's the other thing you're going to notice in it? You're going to see 2 or 3 different colors. We're actually going to be doing 2 colors on this piece. So if you're watching, welcome. My name is Amy Howard, and I am the mother maker and the developer of the products here at Amy Howard at Home. A lot of people don't realize, but I have designed and manufactured furniture for over 30 years. And in that process, I was developing finishes that would go along with the pieces of furniture that we were actually manufacturing. And for 18 years, I actually were designing furniture and manufacturing and developing finishes for F. Schumacher, which a lot of you know has been around for a long, long time, and it's a luxury brand. And so many of the finishes that I developed were going around beautiful designer fabrics. And so I love being able to be a teacher now. And so as you pop on here, please send me some love, send me some hearts, and let me know where you're tuning in from as you're getting ready for these holidays and your family, even though our small family. Hey, Janet, hugs to you, girl. So the cool thing about it is, too, with this, we call it our tribe, our creative tribe, are people that enjoy rescuing and restoring furniture. Now, the finish that I'm going to show you today and how to do, you will be starting on raw wood. Now, if you want to be able to do this finish on something that's painted, I would recommend cleaning it first with the clean slate and then painting it with Bauhaus Buff and then going through this process. So you won't have the stain that's showing through, which can be so beautiful on pieces, but at least we're able to rescue and restore that piece. All right, so I've got the steps laid out here that I'm going to turn my camera down and I'm going to span it. Now, here's something exciting that we started. If you share this video and you tag 3 friends, your name will go in for a drawing, and we are going to be giving away 2 of these milk paints. So that way the person that's name is drawn will get them absolutely free. We'll make the announcement on Facebook and we'll be shipping it out. So for me to be able to take this time out to be able to teach you how to do this. It's my way of pouring into you and your level of training, and it rises your level of connoisseurship when you start looking at things and dissecting. But we say sharing is caring. So if you know somebody especially that loves to paint furniture, they love rescuing things, it's something that they're wanting to kind of get into, share this video with them and say, you might learn something from this. All right, so I'm gonna turn my camera down. Be sure and tell me where you're from as you come on. I want to turn my camera down so that way you can kind of see it. And I'm going to go through the steps. So that way you'll start to dissect what it is and start training your eye on how it is, what it is. The only way that you can get great looking finishes, guys, is because you've got to layer things. The multiple of layering, the multiples of colors to be able to get to the final result makes a huge, huge difference. All right, so step one, raw wood. We're going to need raw wood to be able to start with on this finish. Like I said just a minute ago, if you want to be able to do it on something that is already has a finish on it, you probably want to clean it with clean slate and paint it with Bauhaus Buff. And then we'll just go into the gesso. But I'm going to be showing you this finish that it's done on raw wood. You can too. I love you being able to get the products and test it out. This was wood that we got at Lowe's. And we cut it up, and that way it allowed for some great samples that you can do these finishes on. So starting with raw wood, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna stain. And I'm gonna take you through the process, but let me just show these visually. So after you have raw wood, you're gonna stain it. That gives you your color underneath. The second step is actually a coat of cracked gesso on top of the stain. Our third step is actually our darkest color, which I'm going to show you how to mix it. So stain it first. After it's dried a couple of hours, put on your first coat of cracked gesso. One coat is all we did. Then you're going to apply your darker color. That's what's peeking through our finish. I'm going to show you how to mix this. Then we put Scandinavian gray on top of the darker color that was custom, and then we antiqued it, which gives us this glorious finish. So that's what I want you to get down. I want you to start understanding the process that we go through. Now, so I'm gonna move these away, and let's go through everything to be able to see how it's done. All right, so our raw wood, I'm gonna be using the gel stain. And this gel stain, if you haven't worked with it, guys, is probably it's maybe one of your favorite products. That, other than also the matte sealer. I'm pretty much in love with the matte sealer. All right, so this gel stain, if we had smell-o-vision, you could smell it and you can see the consistency of it. It smells divine, but it's a gel consistency. So it's great to be able to work on horizontal as well as vertical surfaces because the gel allows it to hold. It has a body to it. Can you see this? If I kind of hold it, see how thick it is? It has a really thick consistency. And I'm going to apply the stain. Now, y'all are like, why is she doing that stain? Why is she staining the piece first before she's going to paint it? Is that not going to cover it up? The reason we're doing this, guys, is because it allows us to be able to emulate a finish that would have worn over a period of time. Okay, and I'm going to show you again. You're going to see that when we get into the final process. So I am working with English walnut. You can also use this on top of existing stained pieces. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did a Facebook Live on how you can use this gel stain on top of golden oak that's already lacquered. So kitchen cabinets, you can put this on top of it. You do a couple of thin coats, and it's beautiful. But you can also use it on raw wood. So I'm just gonna take a rag and wipe this off. It's as simple as that. So once you allow this to be able to dry down, it's gonna dry down to this color. Now I put it on fairly thin. I didn't want it to go really, really dark, but this is the English walnut just on one thin application. So after this is dried for about 2 hours, we're gonna do our next step, which is going to be our cracked gesso. Cracked gesso is made to be the gesso look. It has calcium carbonate in it to be the gesso that goes underneath a piece of furniture that they would have used a long time ago. Let me show you. So dissecting the Y behind the finish, look at this. See this white that's peeking through? So our stain is first, number one. Number two, the second step is going to be the cracked gesso. That's that white. Gesso was always used. Now here, this is so funny. I apologize every time I do this. This is the teacher in me. A lot of you don't know, I actually went to school to become an attorney, but I went back to school and studied the arts and business and art history. I loved art history. I worked in a bodega in Florence, Italy, and we were doing finishes and developing the looks and understanding how to be able to replicate these pieces that were hundreds of years old. The odd thing about it is, working in that bodega, they were making pieces that were actually being turned around and sold in Florence to be antiques. Because a lot of the Italians believe that if you are making something, if it's made out of antique wood, they feel like they can call that an antique, even though the finish was just done a few days prior. So I'm wanting you to be able to see, here's the stain, that's our first coat. The second application is going to be the gesso. So let's put that on now. All right, so we're going to go back. As you pop on, please be sure, share this video with somebody, especially if they want to be able to learn how to do finishes. But your name will go in for the drawing, and we'll be giving this away, this product away, for you to be able to do this yourself. All right, so I'm going to take the cracked gesso. It's in a powder form. So it's 1 part, I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons. Just to be able to show you. So it's 1 part powder, 1 part water. Just use regular tap water. It doesn't have to be hot or cold or anything. It doesn't matter. So it's 1 to 1. And we want to be able to mix it up. In the beginning, I'll do just a little bit because it's easier to get kind of a paste consistency like this. And then after I mix it up, then I'll thin it down just a little bit. I kind of tell people, really make this maybe the night before you're going to be doing your painting project. And please don't let this intimidate you because it's powder. Don't let that intimidate you because it's super, super easy. And I'm going to tell you, if there's anybody watching on here that does the Toscana finish, one of my old world finishing students, guys, tell them how easy it is. And this is not something that you should be nervous about at all. All right, so now, the consistency is going to be about like this. I may thin it down with just a little bit of water. So now that's ready. I have one here that's already been made up. So it kind of lets you see the consistency of it. And after it sets overnight, it is going to thicken just a little bit. So that way you'll want to make sure that you just kind of stir it up good before you get ready to use it. Now, the shelf life of this is about 2 weeks. So after you have used it, you can put it in a Tupperware container, put a lid on it, make sure it's airtight, and you can put it in the refrigerator and use it 2 weeks later. Now, here's the caveat. Make sure that when you get ready to use it after it's sat in the refrigerator that it gets to room temperature. Guys, don't try to work with it where it's really, really cold. Let it get to room temperature again, and then that way you're ready to use it, okay? All right, so now I'm just going to take another chip brush. My stain is dried really good. And I'm going to take my chip brush and I'm going to apply this cracked gesso. The cracked gesso does 2 things. It'll give me a nice fissure crack, and it's also going to be that gorgeous white that will show underneath. This was formulated specifically for milk paint. You do not use it on 1 step. This is strictly for the finish that I'm showing you today. So just come back, just kind of fan it. If you want to, you can also use a sponge brush to apply this, but I want to lighten my touch just a little bit. So that way it's not too streaky. All right, so then that's going to need to dry for about an hour. Now, again, it has no VOCs, so it's going to dry very quickly. And then once it's dried down, it's going to look like this. Now, I did lightly sand this just a little bit before we went live with 400 grit sandpaper. Now, so what have we done thus far? We've stained our raw wood. We've put the cracked gesso on top, it's dried, and now we're ready for our paint. So let's look at let's look at our sample, what we're going for. Here's the stain, here's the gesso. Now we're gonna apply our next coat of paint. Our next coat is gonna be our darkest color. So here is our darkest color. Now, this was 2 teaspoons of Amalfi Coast, 2 teaspoons of Scandinavian Gray, 2 teaspoons, and then 1 teaspoon of black. That allowed me to make this gorgeous color. 2 teaspoons of Amalfi Coast, 2 teaspoons of Scandinavian Gray, and 1 teaspoon of black. So that's going to give me this yummy color. I think that's the other thing that I would love for y'all to get used to doing in being able to make these custom colors, because they're just yummy. And there's going to be colors that you're going to fall in love with. Like, I would literally paint an entire piece of furniture this color and not do anything to it. I wouldn't antique it. It would be fabulous. Now, what I want you to see what I'm doing, I'm having to kind of dig down into the bottom of this just a little bit. Here's something that's going to happen when you're working with milk paints. They're going to settle to the bottom. And because they don't have the chemicals and things in it that are the anticoagulant agents to make it to where this is all natural. And so after just a few minutes, those pigments and things are going to settle to the bottom. So I just have to agitate it. So I'll just have a plastic spoon, and I'll make sure that that pigment is constantly kind of stirred up. And once you get kind of used to this, it's like knitting. You know, when you learn something for the first time, or when you're cooking, like if you're making risotto, it's like, you know, you've just got to continue to kind of stir it. With this, you'll agitate it with your brush. So right now, I'm just making sure that it gets all stirred up. But look at that color. Isn't it fab? All right. So hey guys, as you're popping on, please be sure, share this video, and your name will go in for a drawing, and we're going to be giving away 2 of the milk paints that I'm showing you today. All right, so I'm just going to stir that. Now here's my brush. I'm going to dip it in here. Make sure your brush is loaded up. And then I'm going to, look at this. Oh, do you love this color? I'm painting this directly on top of my cracked gesso. You're going to cover it 100%, guys. So you'll notice I am working on a flat surface. I suggest when you're working with painting milk paint that you want to be able to lay it down. So if you've got a drawer or a door or something like that, just lay it down flat, because it's very thin and runny. When you are mixing your milk paint, you're going to mix 1 part powder and 1 part water. So it's fairly thin. Let me show you. See how thin this is? Look at that. This is what scares a lot of people. They think because it's thin, it's something that they're not used to, but that's just not the case. I'm going to tell you, it's going to dry down to this beautiful, yummy color. Look at this. Isn't that yummy? All right. So now, let's go back over our sample again that we're doing. Stain, gesso, see that dark color? Your dark color can go on first, it can go on last. On this particular sample, I did it first. So I did my dark color first. Now here's my dark color. It's already dried. It's going to dry fairly quickly. Then I want to take my Scandinavian Gray, which is this color right here. We've got Color Crush this week. We're doing Scandinavian Gray. So I mixed 1 part water, 1 part powder, and that gives me my color. There again, I'm just going to stir this up again. So we did our first coat was a dark color. Our second coat is a light color. Uh-oh. And then I'm just going to paint this directly on top of that gorgeous blue-gray. Guys, as you pop on here, just tell me where you're tuning in from. And I'd love for my Old World Finishing students to tell somebody, just encourage them that they want to be able to experiment with doing these milk paint finishes, because they're very addictive and they're going to love the look that they're going to be able to get from it. All right. So we're going to allow this to dry it's going to dry within 15 to 20 minutes. And because it's a milk-based paint, it's going to dry very quickly. And hold on just a second. I'm going to see if they could stop sanding, or if you could tell them maybe to stop until after I'm finished. Maybe that'll kind of help. All right, so sorry guys, sorry for the noise. All right, so we're going to allow this to dry about 15 or 20 minutes. Now, look how dark it is when it's wet. When it dries, this is what it's going to look like. Can you see? So it's considerably darker when it's wet, but it's going to dry down to be this color, which is yummy. It's a great, great gray. But here's what's fun. When you look at this, it looks very unassuming. But what we've got going on here is we've layered it. We've got our stain, we've got our cracked gesso, we've got our dark color, and then we've got our light color on top. So what are we ready to do? We're ready to antique it. So we're going to take our antiquing glaze, and we're going to pour it in a little container. And I'm going to take a seaweed sponge. I've put it in my water because I want to make sure that it's soft. And this acts as my bath. So I'm going to dip this into my antiquing glaze here. And I'm going to work from the upper left and go down to the right. I'm going to work at a 45-degree angle and work my way across. The reason I tell you that is I don't want you working in rows. I want you to try to be somewhat organic about it. So think South America. Think how it's larger and it comes more down into a tail. I want you to be doing it organic. I'm so afraid. I tell people, especially my accountants, my IT people, people that are much more number oriented, they'll have a tendency to try to make this too mathematical, and I need you to think organically and creatively. So I'm going to lay this down, and we talk about being in passes. So I want you to lay this down in passes to where we're going to have the first pass that we will lay it down, and it's going to have 100% coverage. So we're not going to have any holidays. All right, so I've covered the entire board. Now it's sitting there and you're going, well, that's not very exciting. No, it's not. So what I want to do is, because I just want to make sure that I didn't get any paint in this seaweed sponge. So I'm going to put it in my water because I want to clean it. When you are working with a seaweed sponge and you're using it to antique or to take paint off, what happens, it becomes a positive tool once it starts to get loaded with paint. So you've got to clean it. So you will dip it into the antiquing glaze, you'll apply it to your piece, and it'll start removing the paint. Then it becomes a positive tool, and then you want to put it back in the water just to clean it off before you come back into the antiquing glaze. Does that make sense? Hey guys, I'm seeing your names as they come up here. Merry Christmas! Happy Hanukkah, guys. Shalom, is that Pammy or Tammy? One of my dear friends was named Tammy. Pammy. Hey guys, I love knowing where you're coming in from, and knowing that your questions, after we see your questions, we will be answering them later. You can go back and you can do #replay, but send me some love and let me know where you're coming from. But also, really and truly, we would love for you to share this video because it helps people that they want to be able to learn more sophisticated finishes, things that are different that can really be fabulous. I did this finish on my kitchen cabinets in our Cherbourg house that was actually on the cover of Traditional Home. And everybody that walked in that kitchen was like, oh my gosh, I love these cabinets. What is this? Well, you see, it's hard to explain. Well, it's stain, it's gesso, there's a darker color, there's a lighter color. So it just lets you kind of see. All right, so now I've put that on there, and what I've allowed to happen, that I am allowing this to sit for just a minute. Because what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to start to lift this paint. By lifting this paint, it's what's going to allow me to be able to get these finishes. This is what's going to allow me to see my stain, to see my gesso, to see that darker color, and then to be able to see the color on top. Is everybody with me? All right. So now I'm going to start taking this and pulling it. I will work my way around. There again, think very organically. I don't want you to be going in lines. Please don't do that. It's going to have worn, especially like if you're working on a chair, think about where that chair would have worn, where it would have maybe around the legs, around the top of it, around the arms. Those are the areas that you want to be able to kind of concentrate. So now as I'm working my way around this, you'll see it's getting a little muddy. And I'm starting to work that paint. Look what's happening. Now my sponge is getting dirty. What do I need to do? I'm gonna put it in this water over here. So watch this. See what I'm talking about? See how dirty and murky my water's getting? If I was sticking that into my antiquing glaze, I am polluting my antiquing glaze, and I wanna be able to keep it nice and clean, so that way it's important to have your bath there. So dip that in there. I'm gonna squeeze this out. And then I'm gonna come back again. Now here's the fun thing. Oh, now I'm starting to see it. And it had to sit there for just a minute. Don't get frustrated and go, I can't see it, it's not working. That's the reason for doing that original pass. And so it's allowed it to kind of liquefy the paint again. And now I'm gonna come back with a lint-free rag, and I'm gonna kind of start to pull that up. Here's the other thing. Now let me see if I can kind of let you see that. Can you see where it's starting to lift that so you can see that underneath? Now, here's the other thing. This is a problem that I've seen people do. They make their paint too thick. They're so used to paint being thick. When they start to mix their milk paint, they're going, I'm gonna make it thicker because that's what I'm used to. That's what I like, a thick paint. If you make your milk paint, if you don't do the consistency of 1 part powder to 1 part water, your paint's gonna be too thick. You're gonna love painting it on, but guess what? When it gets time to actually antique it, you're going to be scrubbing it. We don't wanna scrub the finish. We wanna be able to antique it, and we want it to lift so we've got a beautiful antique look. All right, so let me turn this down again. Hey guys, all right. So I'm gonna come back in again, and this is a process in working with this and making it to start to lift. Now, after it's sat there, sometimes I will come around on the edges. Look at that. Can you see that? Can you see that edge? See where it's starting to kind of come up? You can never do a piece of furniture and use sandpaper on it and get a real authentic looking finish. It's not gonna happen. Now the magic is starting to happen. Now let me show you this. Can you see that? See how my gesso is starting to show through? See how the colors are starting to come through? That's what we're going for. It looks natural. It's something that would have happened over a long period of time. Oh, this is so fun. It's so easy. And once I feel like I've understood where the paint is at, and whether I'm working on a door or a drawer, I will have my sponge in one hand, and I'll have my rag in the other, because I'm wanting to kind of control the wear and the amount of antiquing glaze that I have on it. Here's the other thing. Please, 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 do not antique something 50-50. You want it to be more 60-40, and you want to be able to have oval eye track. So I'm working my way over here. And sometimes I will take my sponge and I'll hit it and just kind of wear it just a little bit. I'm really careful about that because I don't want to have scrub looking marks. So let me show you. See how that's starting to pop through? Can you see that white? Isn't that yummy? Okay, so all that's left to do is to be able to come back, and once we've worn it, we want to be able to come back and put the light wax and the dark wax on it. Now I'm going to show you. I've already waxed this piece. I don't have one that's at this step to be able to show you, but you're going to load up your light antique wax like this, and then offload it onto some cardboard, and then you're going to go over the piece irregular. Now let me show you. Hold on, I don't want to leave this part out. And go over the piece. I try not to go over all of it, because what you will see with working with milk paints, when you come back and you start doing the wax, just kind of here and there and blending it, you'll start to get multiple colors in it. So that way it'll give you that variance. You can come back with the dark wax. Now here I tell people, as a rule, when you're working with dark wax, guys, you're only going to use about 15% dark wax. Do not put this dark wax all over your piece. You're going to ruin it very quickly. The other thing is you've got to make sure that this light wax has come to tack before you do that. So I'm going to offload that there. And I'm just going to kind of come around the edges and feather it in. I watch people and they'll put on the dark wax and they'll do way too much and it will literally ruin their project within moments. All right, so because they get too much and it goes too muddy. Now I'm going to take just a little bit, tap the side of your dust of ages. I'm going to put the dust of ages over this like this. Take me back to my childhood. I like working with my hands. And I usually, once that dark wax has set, also make sure that your light wax has pretty much come to tack. It cannot be wet, guys, at this point. Do not let your wax be wet because it's going to go black with the dust of ages on it. And then come back and buff it with the dust of ages sitting on top of it. And then once you put a little bit of elbow grease into it, this will act as a burnishing agent. Look at that. And then as you start to just see that sheen, don't buff the whole thing. I don't want the whole thing to be shiny. Let certain areas be a little bit more shiny than others. Look at that. Isn't that fab? I will tell you. Let me get a drink of water. As many years as I've been doing this, I never get to a point that when I start to put the wax on and I start to kind of pull it away and I get this beautiful finish that I don't get excited. And I guess when I stop getting excited, that's when I need to stop. But I am so passionate about what I do. And I am so proud of the products that we have here at Amy Howard at Home and the ability for us to be able to teach you and really start to understand and emulate finishes like this that you see on antique pieces. And truly, guys, if this is something that you want to be able to do, if you want to build a business and you want to have a side hustle, as my kids say, they call it hustle. I used to think that was almost like a curse word. But if you want a side hustle and you want to be able to paint furniture, this is what I want you to learn how to do. It's great to use the one step. It's such a great entry point to be able to rescue and restore something as simple as cleaning it. But this is when you really start getting excited to be able to see something that looks so authentic and so beautiful. And then you get to tell everybody, guess what? I did that. It's not 200 years old. I did that yesterday, because that's when I say it's your turn to enjoy the bragging rights. Have a fabulous, fabulous Christmas. Let's not forget the reason for the holiday. It's not about the gifts. It's because Jesus came to this earth and he gave us the gift of salvation. What a glorious reason to celebrate a holiday. Even if it's simple, it's with family and small groups. We're going to be safe, but to enjoy the real gift this holiday season. I love you guys. Merry Christmas. Have a great, great time of rest and painting all kinds of stuff. Enjoy the bragging rights, guys. Bye.